What's up, guys? Neil Orfield here, and I'm going to show you how I will be setting up my fantasy cruncher for tonight's showdown slate between the 49ers and the Cardinals. I'll be setting up for the largest field GPP, so some of the steps I will take here, I wouldn't take in a cash game or small field GPP necessarily. Things like leaving a lot of money on the table or using very unique, unnecessary players for a small field GPP. I will be including those players in my player pool for the largest field GPP. While you're coming in, please do hit that like button. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel. We've got a lot of great content for you. So subscribe, maybe hit that notification button too, so you can get alerts when our shows go live. All right, I am going to start by, I'm going to take a new step here that I don't usually do. First, I'm going to do what I do usually do, which is find my quick view so I can see in the middle of my screen what I want to see in terms of these columns. But one thing that I have not done in the past, and my friend Peter Viles, aka Ahabro, showed me on Twitter that you can actually save some time here. So I'm going to sort by my projection, and yeah, I don't know what's going to be faster. I can save some time later on in the when I'm making groups by just removing anybody who doesn't have a projection from my player pool. So I'm going to go ahead and uncheck all these boxes. I don't know, maybe there's a faster way to do this as well, but I think I'm just going to, I don't know anything faster. So I'm just going to uncheck all of these players with no projection by hand because as Peter showed me, they then do not show up when you are making groups. Anybody who is not checked here doesn't show up. So you can save some time in finding the players you're trying to find when making groups. All right, so I have removed everybody with no projection. There is a little bit of risk involved here in that some of these players, after inactives come out, could have a projection and maybe even a good enough projection that you'll want them in your player pool. So just take note of that later on when you are making lineups. Make sure that anybody who ends up having a projection you might want in your player pool. So just check them back into it. All right, so I've removed those players. Now I'm going to go to my captain tab and set an exposure cap on players in the captain spot of 20%. So now I can get no more than 20% of any player in the captain spot. Again, this is not a magic number. This is a number that I kind of default to unless I see something differently on a given slate. If I want to spread out even more and have more players in the captain spot, I might set this to 10%. Sometimes maybe there's a player that I want in more than 20% of my lineups in the captain spot because they just project so well. Maybe I could, go a lot higher here for one individual player. Just, you click on this box and say I wanted 40% Christian McCaffrey, just change it for Christian McCaffrey specifically. On this slide, I think I'm going to keep it at 20% per player. All right, going into advanced options, and I'm going to be working in two tabs here, the groups tab and the general tab. Started in the general tab, unique players per lineup. If you're making 150 lineups, I think leaving it at one unique player per lineup makes sense. If you're making 20 or fewer player lineups, I would probably suggest changing this to two unique players per lineup just for the sake of diversifying your lineup set a little bit. Team salary, I don't set a minimum. I do set a maximum. The only purpose of this, so I don't do this on a main slate. I only do this on showdown slates or slates where I'm concerned about being duplicated. So I don't want to make lineups that are going to be duplicated, 100 times, 200 times. I'm trying to limit the number of times my lineups are duplicated. And one easy way to avoid the most duplicated lineups is to leave a little bit of salary on the table. So for the purpose of this video, I'm going to leave $1,000 on the table. So any lineup that I make is going to use a maximum of 49,000 in salary, not using the full 50,000 that is allowed by DraftKings. And again, I'm just trying to avoid the most duplicated lineups. Try to get lineups that are duplicated preferably 10 or fewer times, ideally 0 times. If it's a good lineup and not duped at all, that's the goal. But just trying to avoid some of the most duplicated lineups by setting a salary cap here. Offensive players versus defense. Default is set to a max of 2 players versus the defense. I'm going to change this to 5 players versus the defense. So I could theoretically have 5 San Francisco players in my lineup and just the Cardinals defense. It doesn't work out all that often. It's also not going to come up very often in my lineups. I'm just allowing it as a possibility. So tonight's game, I think we're going to have Colt McCoy starting for the Cardinals. this could be a situation where the Cardinals offense just is completely unable to move the ball against the San Francisco defense. But maybe the Cardinals defense has 3 sacks or a pick six. They could put up a good number of fantasy points. So this is actually a scenario where I could see it happening, where we have San Francisco winning the game, 30-0 or 30-6, whatever. And San Francisco, you want 5 San Francisco offensive players in your lineup, and nobody from the Cardinals offense compares to those San Francisco players. Maybe the defense then is the best play in terms of either their raw score or their best point per dollar value. So I think that this could be a scenario where we could see something like that. But again, not something that I force into my lineups. It's just something that I allow for up to 5 players against the opposing defense. Global exposure setting. Leaving this at 100%. You already saw I changed in the captain spot specifically to 20%, but I'm not going to set a cap on players outside of that. Randomness, I turned it on when it is part of my view. My quick view has randomness on, so I'm leaving it on, and then I'm going to put mine at 50%. If you want more control over your lineups, I would use less randomness. Maybe I think 10% is probably a good number if you want more control. Still leaves a little bit of randomness on there and also speeds up Fantasy Cruncher a little bit to have a little bit of randomness on there. But also, generally you have pretty strong control over your lineups. Also, if you're using classic randomness, might be a good idea to use slightly lower randomness as well. Guys, we have a great offer for new users only. You can get full access to everything Stokastic has to offer for NFL for 3 days free. Projections, ownership, 1v1 tools, lineup generator, top stacks tool, all free. Zero risk. Sign up now. The link is in the description of this video. Note that Fantasy Cruncher is an add-on and is not included in this offer. Minimum projection included in calculation, default set to 3. I'm going to leave it there. This means that if I have a projected player for under 3 fantasy points, they're not going to be included in my player pool. For me, if I want a player in my player pool who projects for fewer than 3 fantasy points, I am just going to manually adjust their projection to make sure that it's above 3 fantasy points to get them into my player pool. All right, and then players from each team max, I'm going to leave that at 5, so I could have 5 players from one team versus 1 from the other. Okay, groups is where I do a lot of my work as well. And generally, the most important groups, due to the way the scoring is done on DraftKings, revolve around quarterbacks. So here I'm going to I'm going to start with a Jimmy Garoppolo captain group. So I made Jimmy Garoppolo in captain my key player. And now this entire group is going to be about lineups that have Jimmy Garoppolo in the captain spot. All right, so now I'm going to sort by position and just add every 49ers pass catcher into my secondary group. So I'm going to go ahead and add Ray McLeod, Debo, Ayuk, Jennings, Danny Gray, Tyler Kroft, George Kittle, Dwelly, Werner. And then I'm going to include the running backs here as well. All right, so now I've got this group. Now, Jimmy Garoppolo, not a great rusher. He does have a couple rushing touchdowns already this year. I think that he could be used in the captain spot with just one player in a 150 set. I think that it makes sense to include, to allow for lineups that have Jimmy Garoppolo at captain with just one pass catcher in the flex. Again, this is a spot where if you're doing 20 or fewer lineups, I would probably just say, if any key player used, then use at least 2, because generally, if Jimmy Garoppolo is the optimal captain, there are going to be multiple 49ers pass catchers in the flex. If he throws it too much to just one player, that player is probably going to outscore him. So you need him to be spreading the ball around. I mean, he obviously needs to put up a good number of fantasy points to be the optimal captain, so he's going to be throwing it a lot. He does not have a ton of rushing upside, so he's probably not adding much with his legs. So generally, the majority of scoring is going to be through the air. Can't just go to one player, because then that player will outscore him due to the dynamics of the scoring on DraftKings. So typically, if I have Jimmy Garoppolo in the captain spot, I would prefer multiple pass catchers from the Niners. I am going to allow for just one. As I said, he does have a couple rushing touchdowns on the year. He could score a rushing touchdown here. It wouldn't be that strange of an event. So I will allow for just one player here. Building for a 150 set. But again, if you're building for 20 or fewer, I would probably just change this to 2 players and leave it at that. So I'm going to leave it now at require just one, but I am also going to make it more likely that in more of my lineups I get multiple by adjusting here and giving boosts to players from the Niners with Garoppolo in the captain spot. Debo, I'm thinking I might need to give. I think Debo projects pretty well point per dollar here, so I'm not going to give him quite the full boost just because I don't think I want Debo in every single Garoppolo captain lineup. Everybody else here, I think it's okay to give a full. By full, I mean 12% boost. Again, nothing magical about that number at all. Smaller boost for the running backs. This is just kind of through trial and error. This is about where I like to give the boost just so that I get more of those players, but don't force them into every lineup. 12% has been about right, has worked pretty well for me. All right, so I'm going to, that's it for this group. That's my Garoppolo captain group. Now I'm going to make a second group that is going to be McCoy. Latest is it sounds like Colt McCoy is going to play tonight. I don't think that has been confirmed, so not a sure thing, but I'm going to assume that Colt McCoy is going to be the quarterback as I make this group. So I'm going to add Colt McCoy. I'm actually going to add Kyler as well, just in case we get that news. But I'm going to build this as if it's a Colt McCoy captain lineup, and I'll tell you what I would do differently if it ends up being Kyler. All right. So I'm going to now go ahead and add all of the Cardinals pass catchers to the secondary group. Again, I added Colt McCoy as a key player. Now these guys I'm just adding to the secondary group. And again, I'm going to include the running backs here. Okay. So now for Colt McCoy, very similar to Jimmy Garoppolo, has not shown much rushing upside in his career. I think that it would be perfectly reasonable to change this to if any key player use at least two players from this group because Colt McCoy just does not have much rushing upside, hasn't proven to have much rushing upside. So generally, with Colt McCoy at quarterback in the captain spot, I would prefer to have multiple Cardinals pass catchers in the flex. So it's the debate here for me would be leave this at use at least one player, just change that straight up to two players. Again, I think building for a 150 set, it's okay to leave this at one, but generally I am going to prefer multiple Cardinals pass catchers in there just because Colt McCoy has not shown much rushing upside in his career, and he is pretty expensive. He is 9,200 something along around there. So he's fairly expensive. He's probably not going to be the optimal captain unless he is throwing multiple touchdowns to multiple players. So generally, I'd prefer to have two players from the Cardinals. If I have Cardinals pass catchers with Colt McCoy in the captain spot, I'm going to allow for just one here. And again, though, I'm going to give these boosts. And Marquise Brown, I'm not going to give him any boost because he just projects incredibly well for 200. I'm not sure if he is confirmed in yet. Or maybe slightly lower. He looks like he's going to project very well. Just eyeballing it. This is not, I'm not doing any math to figure out. I'm just kind of looking at the projection relative to the price. Trey McBride, again, going to project very well for $1,000 price tag. Maybe give him a slightly lower as well. All right. We'll see. I'll have to test this. This is going to be trial and error here as well, whether I'm going to come back and give these guys lower boosts. Okay. So here I am saying, require at least one pass catcher in lineups with Colt McCoy at captain, or this one says Colt McCoy or Kyler at captain. So this is for either of them. But again, I am setting this up for Colt McCoy, and the difference is if Kyler ends up being the quarterback for the Cardinals tonight, I'm going to just check this box and say only apply plus minus adjustments. I could theoretically have Kyler in at captain with no Cardinals pass catchers just because he has more rushing upside than Colt McCoy. I think that he could get there without bringing along any pass catchers. It's still very unlikely. So I still would prefer still getting those boosts. But again, I'm setting this up assuming that Colt McCoy is going to be in at quarterback. We're going to want at least one pass catcher in every lineup with Colt McCoy in the captain spot and preferably two. But for now, I'm just going to leave this at one. I might end up going and changing this to required two later on. I'll kind of see how the groups come out, how the lineups come out. All right. And then the other groups, I'm going to do a Jimmy G flex. I'm going to do a Boy flex with the Jimmy G. So I'm going to find him in the quarterback spot. So this is Jimmy G flex, making him my key player. And same thing, I'm going to add all of these Niners pass catchers to a secondary group. And now we've got Jimmy G in the flex, so we can add these players at captain as well, the pass catchers. All right, looks good enough. And for this group, I'm not going to do anything else to it. All I'm saying is if you've got Jimmy Garoppolo in at flex, require at least one player of the Niners pass catchers elsewhere in the lineup. It's very unlikely for Jimmy Garoppolo to be optimal even in the flex without at least one player from the Niners elsewhere in the lineup, one pass catcher. So this is all I'm doing. I'm not going to give boosts or anything. Just going to say require at least one when I have Garoppolo in the flex. And then same thing for Colt McCoy. I'm going to go ahead and find him down here. Colt McCoy, make him my key player. And then I'm going to add all of these Cardinals pass catchers to a secondary group. Including in the flex spot. Okay. And same thing, just going to leave this group as is. I'm requiring at least one pass catcher from the Cardinals in every lineup that has Colt McCoy in it. That's all I'm doing. No boost or anything. So that'll do it for my groups. I'm going to come and I'm going to, you can see how, oops, I have crunched too many lineups already this week. So I'm just going to X these out. All right, maybe it's not worth my time to delete all of these crunches. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and crunch. Guys, we have a great offer for new users only. You can get full access to everything Stokastic has to offer for NFL for 3 days free. Projections, ownership, 1v1 tools, lineup generator, top stacks tool, all free. Zero risk. Sign up now. The link is in the description of this video. Note that Fantasy Cruncher is an add-on and is not included in this offer. Lineups using my projections. So this is without making any adjustments to any projections here. Maybe I'm actually going to go ahead and make an adjustment. I have no idea exactly how Colt McCoy is going to project once he is named the starter. I would assume it's less than Kyler. I'm not sure that this probably does account for an injury to some extent to Kyler, but I'm going to just change these projections. Maybe it'll be around 12 fantasy points. I don't know. I don't know what to project Colt McCoy for, but that's where we will start. And then I'm going to crunch 150, see what comes out with just that one change. All right, so After crunching, so after making those groups, I see Garoppolo, 2 pass catchers, like to see that. Garoppolo with the pass catcher in the flex, still haven't seen any Colt McCoy here. Getting to a lot of Jimmy G, getting a lot of pass catchers in there as well. All these lineups look like they correlate well enough for me. I don't see any big red flags here. When I've got Jimmy Garoppolo in the lineup, I've got at least one pass catcher because I required it. Colt McCoy, I'm kind of curious if I only got to 2 Colt McCoy captain lineups, and they both have multiple pass catchers in them. So that is what I like to see generally. And they also have Jimmy G in this one with a pass catcher in Christian McCaffrey. So I think that all of these lineups look like they correlate well enough. Second thing that I do, so this is just how I make my lineups. I make sure that in the groups, I make sure that the correlations are going to make sense in my lineups. And then the only other thing I do is I'll go tab by tab, position by position to see, do I need to make any adjustments to player projections to get to more or less of players? And generally, I'm making these decisions checked against the top single game plays tool, the top showdown tool, top stacks tool for showdown and single game plays. That's what I'm trying to say, I guess. I use this tool. I look at this to determine how much I want of various players. Generally, that's how I make most of my decisions, my player decisions. So just to give you a couple examples, I'm not actually going to make these decisions now because I'm going to make them later on after we have inactives, once we know who's in, who's out, after I've done some more digging in the slate. That's not really the purpose of this video. I'm just showing you how I set up Fantasy Cruncher, my general process. So my general process from here would be to go position by position and say, okay, Colt McCoy with a projection of 12 fantasy points, I'm getting to just 9%. I think I'm going to want more. He's a quarterback on a 1-game slate. So I probably want to give him a little bit of a higher projection. Running back getting to 72% Christian McCaffrey. That seems fine. Only getting to 1% of Eli Mitchell. He kind of split carries last week with Christian McCaffrey. Maybe I want more than that of Eli Mitchell, especially coming in at only 14% ownership. So maybe I'll give him a little bit of a boost. Keontae Ingram, now Benjamin gone. Maybe he is, I think, the primary backup to James Conner. James Conner is also a little bit injury prone. Maybe I give Keontae Ingram a little bit of a boost. Kyle Juszczyk, not currently in my player pool. Maybe I give him a boost to above 3 fantasy points just to get him into the player pool. Corey Clement, also not in my player pool. Maybe I want him in there. Again, not making these actual decisions now. I'm just kind of trying to show you my general process. Okay, I'm getting to 82% Marquise Brown. Honestly, that might be fine at the 200 price tag, assuming that he plays. I don't think we know yet for sure. Ooh, unlikely to play. Okay, so this is probably going to be irrelevant here. Good to know. Maybe I will, remove him from the player pool. So that's actually going to change things pretty drastically. I'm just going to crunch again now. Okay. So yeah, now obviously get 0 Marquise Brown. Juwan Jennings is in the player pool. Maybe give him a little bit of a projection boost. Green, not getting to any. Maybe I want some AJ Green. Give him a little projection boost. I should also sort by salary here, so I can see how players project relative to each other. You can see here I switched it to AJ Green projection of 6, Juwan Jennings projection of 6.6, and Juwan Jennings is cheaper. So generally, if I do this, I'm going to get to more Juwan Jennings than AJ Green. Robbie Anderson, maybe give him a little bit of a boost. Greg Dortch, if I want him in my player pool, I have to give him above 3. Ray McLeod. Danny Gray, again, not making these decisions now, just showing you what I'm looking at, kind of things that I will be thinking about when I do make these player decisions, just looking at how much am I getting of players, how much do I want, and what kind of projection do I need to give them to get to the amount that I want. All right, 24% Kittle seems okay. 72% McBride seems like a bit much. I'm going to leave it there for now. He's obviously projects great point per dollar, but maybe I'll just change it slightly. in general, I'll get less because I'm going to have get more of these other guys whose projections I adjust. Maybe I'll change these guys. I don't know. Okay. Maybe I want more Matt Prater, only getting 4%. Already getting to a good amount of Robbie Gould. Not getting to any of the Cardinals defense against Jimmy Garoppolo. They're only 3,400. I don't know. I think I'd like to get to some of this defense. So I'm going to give them a little bit of a projection boost. Maybe the Niners against Colt McCoy, though, too. Maybe I want to get a good amount of them. All right, now I'm going to crunch again, see what comes out. And I'm not going to do this 20 times right now, but I'll just show you. Yeah, so now I'm getting to 20% of the Niners defense, 9% of Cardinals. Good to see that come up. Getting to 9% Prater now. That came up because I adjusted. Obviously, I mean, that makes sense, right? I adjusted the projections positively. I get more of them. Adjusted Trey McBride down a little bit. I get less of him. Now I'm getting to less George Kittle than I was before because of some of the changes I made. Maybe I'd go in and boost his projection now. Wide receivers, still not getting to any of these guys. So I know, okay, I'm going to need to give these guys even bigger boosts. 6, not even enough to get any shares of AJ Green. Maybe I want to boost him up to 8, and maybe I'd boost Juwan Jennings up to 7.6. Robbie Anderson, maybe 5, 4. And just kind of see what happens. So I crunch again, still not getting to any Eli Mitchell. Maybe I want him a bigger projection. Not a whole lot of Colt McCoy. Give him a bigger projection. And then same thing. All right, see, now I'm getting to a little bit more Colt McCoy. Good to see. And again, not going to go through again. This is going to be my last crunch, but just want to show you, okay, still, maybe I'd give these guys bigger boosts. Again, assuming that I want them in my, to get them into some lineups, have to continue adjusting bit by bit until I get to the amounts that I want. And as you saw down here, I crunched many times yesterday for Sunday Night Football. And I typically do. I do it incrementally, bit by bit, until I get to the amounts that I want of each player. And of course, checking periodically to make sure, do these lineups still correlate the way I want them to? Here I'm seeing Jimmy Garoppolo with 1, 2, plus a running back, 3 pass catchers. I think that's fine. So just have to check periodically to make sure, these lineups are still correlating the way I want them to. Good to see here. I've got Colt McCoy in captain with 3 pass catchers. That is totally fine, having 3 pass catchers with the quarterback in the captain spot. So I think they're still correlating well enough. And now I'm getting closer to the exposure caps, the exposures that I want on each player. So just adjusting until I get to that amount that I want. Anyway, that is going to do it for this video. Good luck tonight. Hope you can find some success using this or a similar process.